Welcome to the Australian sailing presentation and discussion session, which will be chaired by our auspicious Mr. Stuart Walton behind me here. Auspicious, there you are.
Sounds good.
Stuart is from the Royal Perth Yacht Club, all the way from the west. He tells us that after 25 years in the automotive and mining industries and as a keen sailor, he took the best job in Perth as General Manager of the Royal Perth Yacht Club. In recent times at the club, he's focused on the development of youth sailing and, like most clubs around the world, is committed to attracting more people to the sport of sailing. He's very proud to represent WA on the Marina Industry Association as a director, and he always looks forward to picking up new ideas at Marinas 19. And I'll welcome Stuart.
Thank you. Now, I'm not going to bore you because our wonderful visitors from Australian Sailing have got lots to tell you, I hope. I would ask for your sympathy as far as Alister is concerned. Nothing to do with his age, but rather the fact that he told me a short while ago that his alarm this morning was set for 3:30 in order to catch an aeroplane to get here on time for this presentation. And to demonstrate how fit, active and youthful he is, he leaves here, hops on a plane straight back to Melbourne. So thank you indeed, Alister, for coming. We do have an apology. Ben Houston, who's the 2-month now, I think, been 2 months in the chair as CEO of Australian Sailing, was coming to talk to us today, but he had other engagements, but happily volunteered Alister and obviously Ben Callard, who most of you in Queensland would know, to come and represent Australian Sailing. I asked Alister and Ben to provide me with a broad précis, if you like, of their career. Were I to read that out, we'd be here till probably about 2:30. Alister in particular, after 40-odd years with Ronstan, and he remains their chairman for another 7 years at least, he told me this morning, so that he would then clock up 50 years with Ronstan. But he's been heavily involved in Australian sailing, the sport of sailing, for pretty well all your adult life, I think it's fair to say. And Ben is even such a young man that he appears to be. I don't have his age on his piece of paper, but he's been involved in Australian sailing for 10 years and is now the regional manager for Queensland, Northern Territory and Northern New South Wales. Well, if that doesn't cut across a few political borders, I really don't know what does. So I'm going to hand over to Alister. They will both present to you. At the end of that, we'll have a Q&A session, which I'll try to keep under control, because we have lunch at, I think, 12:30 or thereabouts. So, Alister, please make welcome Alister Murray.
Thanks very much for the introduction, Stuart, and it's great to be here. I am a little bit tired, I've got to admit. 3:30 was an early start, but it's a pleasure to come to the sunshine. Sailing is probably the best thing that I ever took up, the best decision I ever made as a person. I started sailing in Sea Scouts when I was 11. It became my passion. Became everything I lived for, particularly through my teen years. It ended up becoming my career. I've worked for, as Stuart says, 43 years with Ronstan, and 45 years in the sailing industry. And I can't imagine what life would have been without it, because I've developed friendships all around Australia and around the world, and I can go sailing with as many people as I would like to, and it's been an absolute joy. I started sailing with my father. I sailed with all of my children. I've sailed with all of my wives, actually. Well, there's been 2 of them. One of them I currently sail with, and I'm looking forward to sailing with my granddaughter. And I think that's one of the great things about sailing, is that it's an activity, it's a sport that cuts across generations, enables families to participate in together, play together, and really and compete in together. And I can't think of another sport that you could say that about. So sailing has been an absolutely wonderful thing for me. Sailing's also been great for Australia. and Australia has an incredible reputation in sailing. You'll all remember, well, the older people in the room will remember 1983 when we won the America's Cup, and we've been reminded of that recently in your very great yacht club, Stuart, but we were reminded of that recently when Bob Hawke died, when he was wearing that terrible jacket and partying and talking about any boss that sacks workers for not turning up today as a bum. The America's Cup was huge, but even more recently, a lot of people don't realise that that sailing is one of Australia's leading sports. And in fact, if you look at our medal performance over the last two Olympics, being London and Rio, sailing has been our top gold medal scoring sport of all sports, and Australia has been the top sailing nation. And if you look at the results in London, for example, sailing, we won 3 gold medals and a silver, and we were the only sport to win more than 1 gold medal. So we were by far the leading sport as Australians, and yet if an Australian sailor, gold medal sailor, walks down the street, I'd venture to say nobody would ever even recognise them. So to talk quickly about Australian sailing, my passion is what took me into being a director of Australian sailing, and I'm looking forward to putting back into the sport that's given me so much. Our vision is for sailing to be an iconic Australian endeavour that is welcoming, social and exciting. So what I'd like to see is it become mainstream. You know, many of the other sports that haven't achieved the success of Australia, that sailing has, have got much higher profiles. And I want sailing to be regarded as one of the sports that many, many people can do. Our purpose as Australian sailing is to work through the clubs predominantly to deliver that. And our goals are to build the profile of the sport so that those sailors, when they do walk down the street, are recognised. To grow participation, that's the most critical thing. We want more and more people sailing. To ensure that its sustainability, to maintain that high performance culture and success. If we can get more and more people sailing, my view is that success will take care of itself, but the performance programs are important, and to enhance our people, our structure and our culture. So we've got a very broad agenda, and I'm very excited to be part of it. We've got some great people on our team, and I'd like to introduce one of them to you now. It's Ben Callard, as the regional manager in this part of the world. Ben's going to take you through an overview of what Australian sailing is doing, what comprises our activities, what's important to us and what you'll be seeing. And then I'll come back to you for the second half of the presentation to talk to you about the Sail Pass, which is our latest initiative. So I'll hand over to you, Ben. Good luck.
Thank you, Alister. Just a quick show of hands. Is there anybody in the room who's not a member of a sailing club or works at a yacht club around the country? Couple? Okay, great. Thank you for choosing this topic. There's a few things there on the board. I guess some of the main roles that we participate with yacht clubs and sailing clubs around the country. And this is, I guess, some of our stats around who we are and how we help. And definitely then down the bottom, what we're trying to achieve. So around the country, we've got about 360 yacht clubs. About 180 Discover Sailing Centres, so they're sort of key clubs that have chosen to become accredited to deliver our Learn to Sail programs. And down the bottom, our targets, what we're trying to achieve through the strategic plan through to the end of 2020. You've just heard we've got a new CEO, so I'm sure he'll start to take hold of that and start to shape some of our priorities as we move forward. That's the strategic plan that sits behind that. Most of the yacht club managers and general sort of committee members would have seen this, and that definitely guides us as one team of staff around the whole country now, and prioritises what we do and where resources are spent and how we go. So we're not going to go into that in detail, but that's definitely available on the website if anybody would like it. A little bit of a reminder now on a few things that are coming up, and I guess these are some of our core activities that we facilitate around the country. We've got our Australian Sailing Awards each state, and then our national awards on the 18th of October, and an invitation to everybody to attend the national awards. The nominations are closing very soon and varied in each state. As we progress and into next year, we're going to work towards aligning a lot of those dates, aligning a lot of the categories so we can start to feed and recognise all of the talented individuals and those that are truly committed to our sport from around the country. We have a list of club conferences that are taking place around the country. Some of those, the one in Northern Territory has already been held, and those are quickly approaching. Really encourage anyone who is part of a yacht club and sailing club, particularly if you're on a management committee or a sailing committee, to really get along and attend those. There's a huge range of topics, and they're all, from feedback given from clubs in the previous 12 months, and a lot of clubs are sharing their best cases and case studies and success stories. So a big encouragement to get along and have a look at those. The instructor conferences equally, a little bit small right in there, but really try and provide some professional development and upskilling to all of our instructors around the country. We've just held the one in North Queensland. We had 20 odd instructors from half a dozen different clubs who all had to drive for 4 or 5 hours to get there, so it was pretty impressive. And the feedback that we received from everybody was that it was really valuable, topical, and the things that instructors have to deal with in their world on every Saturday and Sunday. One of our newer initiatives is the She Sails program. This isn't, I guess, a program as such, but it's an umbrella brand and that we'd encourage clubs to get on board to help facilitate the increase of female participation in our sport. Generally, on average, around the country, we have 30% females, so there's a big room for improvement there. That website, shesails.org.au, has a large number of case studies there that will slowly grow and build on over time. There's few from each state, and on the marketing toolkit, there's a whole list of banners and graphics already developed. And like all of our logos, the She Sails, the Discover Sailing, the Tackers, the Australian Sailing logo, they're all there for clubs to use and use as you will. There's some guidance provided to everybody. But generally what we want to try and encourage our network of clubs to do is to promote some brands that are similar. If we're all promoting different brands, then the traction in the marketplace is going to be scattered. If we can get behind a few key brands, then we're going to have greater penetration and greater awareness from the public. Out There Sailing is a new program that's been piloted in Victoria for the last 12 months. The only reason it was piloted in Victoria is because they got a lot of funding through Vic Health, which is a great organisation that helps out down there. And for those of you who are in the community, think Tackers for teenagers. So the Australian government, through the Sports Commission, identified that there's a lot of inactivity in 12 to 17-year-olds. They developed some funding initiatives, and Australian Sailing was one of few who were lucky enough to receive some funding. We're now rolling this program out nationally. We have some ambitious targets to try and satisfy the funding criteria, and obviously increase this level of activity of 12 to 17-year-olds within our sailing community. So it's designed and based around our Start Sailing program and for dinghies. And there's also a stream designed around our keelboat program, so it can be flexible to both streams and available for clubs to use in whatever vessels that they have. Starts to incorporate some windsurfing and some stand-up paddleboarding, and we're developing resources for instructors to upskill them in those areas as well, so that it's all conducted safe. And I guess for that age group, we're looking at presenting an unstructured sort of experience where they get to choose some of the outcomes that they do. There's a whole list of instructor resources with branding and merchandise. And the idea is that it can be adaptable to all the yacht clubs, all the sailing clubs, and implement powerboating so that it becomes a bit of a program to experience club life, in its holistic sense. It's not just to come in, do a 12-hour learn to sail class and we might see you later. To come in, let's experience a little bit of powerboating, let's experience some yacht sailing, let's experience some dinghies, embrace what the whole club lifestyle is about, and hopefully we'll see you come back a little bit greater. And a bit of a case study, the Rye Yacht Club was getting around 10% conversion from their Learn to Sail programs into club membership after delivering the Out There Sailing program for a few seasons and a few different classes. They were getting a 70% conversion. So obviously that's a big difference, and we're not ambitious to say that's going to be the norm, but it does show an increase in conversion, which I think is the real outcome that we're trying to achieve. And Alister, if you could come back to talk about Sail Pass.
Thanks, Ben. Well done. I'd like to talk about, just building on a couple of things that Ben talked about, children and women. The junior programs at yacht clubs are so successful, and there's so many kids sailing, and when you see these kids participating down at the clubs, the relationships they're building, the memories they're generating, the healthy activity they're participating, it is absolutely wonderful to see. And I think sailing, I just cannot think of a better way for kids to be spending time. There's a real drop-off when they go through the youth. When they become teenagers, they take on significant studies. They start to have boyfriends and girlfriends, and they buy their homes, and so there's a real drop-off between 16 and about 30. A real drop-off, and that's an area that the whole industry and the whole sport needs to concentrate on to keep them engaged. But our hope is that many of them come back because they sailed as kids, and I think about a lot of the people that I know that have powerboats. They might not sail today, but they've got powerboats and they're using marinas and they're part of the marine industry. They started sailing as kids. And all I've ever done is had sailing boats, but I'm about to embark on the purchase of my first powerboat at some stage in the future, and I never thought I'd hear myself say that. So many of the marina denizens started as sailors. The other thing is women. Darren Vaux's presentation I thought was tremendous, and he talked about the fact that 15% of licence holders are females. That's a real indictment on our on the environment that we operate in, that we've let that happen, or that it's as bad as that. And you think about all of the brochures of powerboats with men driving the boats and good-looking women draped over the boats. It's just so out of step with the times that, you know, women have got to be promoted as equal participants in the sport and as an equal part of the market. And certainly at Australian Sailing, we're working hard on that with the She Sails program. Ben mentioned that 30%, we do a census, 30% of sailors are female, which is better than obviously the powerboat licensing percentage. We won't rest until it's at least 50%. In line with that, I'd like to talk about an initiative that we're introducing across Australia that we think is a great way to introduce people to sailing. And it's called Sail Pass, and I'd like to pay tribute particularly to Richard Hewitt, who's in the back of the room from Sandringham Yacht Club, who's been a real champion in developing this, and we've used a lot of Richard's work in promoting this nationally. And why is it necessary? Sail Pass, which I'll describe to you, is a means by which non-members can go sailing at clubs. It's a way to introduce people to sailing. It offers a safe, quick and accessible way to get into it. It has massive safety implications, which I will describe a little later. It's compliance friendly. It has the potential to target new markets, which is most important. We talked about females and many other areas that we want more people involved. It's a way of targeting them. It's been very successful at some clubs and is growing nationally. It's a way to get more people having more fun on boats, and it breaks down a lot of the barriers. So this is a program that Australian Sailing is pretty excited about. We've established a working group, and Stuart Walton is one of the people on that group, and Sean Kett from Royal Queensland is on it, and Richard Hewitt, a number of other people. But we looked at what was going on in other sports, and it became apparent that it's very, very common in sailing for people to be using the club's facilities and not contributing to it. A lot of people with keel boats particularly were having people come sailing with them every week and go out on their boats and just sail as guests on the boats, but not formally as guests of the clubs. And there's a number of problems with that. I think one of the big problems is that they're not contributing to the sport that's being provided for them, and certainly the clubs are providing facilities and rescue boats and staff and a lot of infrastructure. And the other problem is that there's safety implications because the people are not registered on the boats, and we had boats out there without even knowing who was on them, which is not an acceptable situation. And if we compared it in terms of a user pays principle with other sports, you think about golf where you pay green fees, or squash where you pay to use the court, or AFL or swimming or anything else. You pay if you go to participate. And sailing wasn't doing that particularly well. We didn't think that was right. There's a few challenges associated with that. A lot of people with boats think it's just okay to take as many people as they like sailing and to not register them and just have long as their guests, but it's fundamentally wrong in many, many ways. So there's been a bit of a lack of buy-in from boat ownerships and from some clubs. It's been a bit of a barrier, and this is what we're addressing with the Sail Pass scheme. So consider the benefits of having it roll out successfully, and I'll give you some examples of how we use it, but think about some of the benefits. It's a flexible introduction to sailing at clubs where people don't have to commit themselves to the full club membership up front. It's accessible, welcoming, and it's quick. It gets people on the water very easily, and once again I'll describe how we go about it. It gets a big safety kick. We've had some examples such as a keelboat race off the coast of Western Australia 2 years ago, Stuart, where the keel fell off a boat. 2 people died. One of those people who died was a member of the yacht club, and one wasn't. And it became very apparent that there wasn't a great knowledge across the fleet, and certainly across fleets across the country, of who is actually on the water. And it's patently unacceptable for clubs to be running races without knowing who is out there. We've had another guy fall off a boat and die in Port Phillip last year. There was another one in Western Australia where some time ago, a guy died, and the person who owned the boat didn't even know who he was. And you think about how that can come about. You'll be down at the boat on the weekend, somebody strolls down the dock looking for a ride on a boat. It's too easy for a skipper to say, yeah, well, come on board with me, we've got room. The person comes on his boat, he's only known as Joe or Bill or Sue or whatever the name might be. Don't even know who it is. If they go overboard or they have a medical incident, how do you contact the next of kin? I mean, it's not acceptable. So it ticks a big safety tick to have a day pass or sail pass scheme. It ticks compliance in terms of the use of the club by non-members. It conforms with the Australian sailing racing rules and personal insurance. If that person, just as an example, who died on the boat in Perth had been a member of a club, his funeral would have been paid for out of the insurance from Australian Sailing. As it turns out, the family had to wear the cost. Communication. It helps you create a marketing database. If you capture the names and addresses and contact details of all the people that you've got on your boats, it's an opportunity to communicate with them later. Special offers, programs, sailing courses, you've got the opportunity to communicate with them. Technology, I'll talk about that a little bit later. It breaks down the perceived barriers, but mostly it's a way to introduce people to sailing at your club. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to hold up Sandringham Yacht Club, and we've got Gary Anderson and Richard back there who are from the club, and I'd like to talk about our personal experience as a club, and this is something that we're communicating to many other clubs that we're getting on board with it. Sandringham Yacht Club has on average 600 sail pass users annually. I'll go straight to the bottom point actually and say that Sandringham Yacht Club views the sail pass as super important because it accounts for 40% of the new members of the club. So 40% of our new members that sign up to the club have come to the club through the Sail Pass scheme. So it's a very wonderful and successful way of introducing people to joining the club. And Sandringham Yacht Club's membership has grown from 1,600 members to 2,700 in the last 10 years. So the way it works is you get 12 sail passes that are offered to each non-member. That's actually been updated. This slide is out of date. You now get 30 sail passes at a cost of $15 each, a maximum, in any 2-year period, which means you pay $15 to go for a sail. What you do is if I have somebody on my boat who wants to come sailing with me, I say, please go to the boating office. You go to the boating office, you register for your sail pass, you go straight into the data bank, you pay your $15, and from then on you're in the system and you can sign on with your mobile phone and pay with your mobile phone. So people are paying $15 each, they become a member for the day, they're official, they've got Australian sailing authorisation, they've got Australian sailing insurance coverage, they're sailors, they're members of your club for that day. The way it works is that the money you spend on the sail passes can then be ultimately credited to your cost of membership. So if you decide to join a club, what you've spent on your sail passes gets credited against that, so you've been sailing for free. And we find that after 6 or 8 or 10 times, most people love it and they want to join up. So it's a great tool for membership. Most members feel really good about it now. There's a bit of resistance to it, but most people feel really good about it. And let me talk about the technology. I have an app on my phone. It's called Member Point. I meet my crew on a Wednesday. We have Wednesday afternoon sailing. We get 40 to 50 boats out there every Wednesday. It's very popular. You can have 6 or 8 or 10 people per boat. The people roll up. I say to my crew, okay, who have we got here today? The regular or the usual culprits. I hit Member Point, put my boat name, the name of the race, and I sign on click, 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 click for all the people that have sailed with me before because their names come up. If they haven't sailed with me before, I put search, I put their name in search, and if they've bought a sail pass, their name comes up and I click and I sign them on. Everybody is now complying. So when we go out on the water, we've got a record, the club's got a record of every person that is on the water that day with next of kin details and everything else we need. Plus, they're all members, they're all official, and they're all paying their way and contributing to the sport and contributing to the membership of the club. Great for the club culture because we used to have this situation where everybody knew who the freeloaders were. The people that would be in the bar or the people that hang around the club that are not paying their way. And it should be a pay-to-play situation. So it's evolved over time. Most members love it. The app really works well. The skippers can use it to sign on. The membership is now mandatory for people that are sailing, and we're now starting to say to people, if you don't comply, it will impact on your race results. So you have to sign people on to be official and to be recorded. And as I said, most importantly, it's converting people to club membership. There's a case study at Elwood, which is a dinghy club. I won't go through all the details, but this is rolling out at big clubs and small clubs across the country. And what are we doing about it? We've created a working group. We're packaging up the sail pass to get clubs on board. As a first step, we surveyed 360 clubs and 240 responded very positively, saying this is something that clubs want to do, but they find it a bit difficult to go about it. So our job is to provide the toolkit. We're communicating it and the benefits to as many clubs as we can, like, for example, the club conferences that Ben spoke about. We'll be rolling out this sail pass message to all clubs. We're developing a how-to kit. We're developing marketing collateral to encourage people to try that sailing experience. We're developing a communication campaign, and we're developing that supporting technology by communicating with all the people that provide the IT solutions at the yacht clubs. So it's underway. This is part of the marketing message. It's all about inclusion, it's about women, it's about different ethnic groups, it's about sailing people with disabilities. It's about we want as many people sailing as we can possibly get out there, and we're developing a wonderful communication package that promotes sailing and says get a sail pass, and for $15 at Sandringham you can come sailing. It might be $10 at another club or $5 at another. In Elwood's case, it's free for the first 5 times, so it's completely up to the club how they go about it. But it's all about getting a sail pass and becoming official and becoming part of the scheme. These are the clubs that have tried that we've got it rolled out to already. So we now have 30 clubs that have set it up on RevSport, which is Australian Sailing's IT platform. We're going to have a key launch of this event at the beginning of the season at Sandringham with media and some speakers, and we'll be promoting the concept hard. We'll have a social media launch, including case studies from around the country, and we'll look at starting that at the beginning of the season. So I think that's it. You can register your club at any time. This is just one component of what Australian Sailing does and what we're working on at the moment. I hope that today Ben and I have given you a good feel for what Australian Sailing's role is, about what's important to us, about how we feel about sailing. I think it's a vital component of every marina's environment. We love it as a sport. We love what we're doing, and in terms of the sail pass, which was what we finished up on, it's all about encouraging more people to sail, making it more accessible, and having people sailing safely with the clubs knowing who's out there and having them contribute financially and in every other way to the sport's future. So, would welcome any questions. Thank you. Maybe.
No, just to go a little bit further
Yep.
in terms of what you said, Alister, this business of people taking ownership or financially contributing to a club and its welfare. I don't know how many clubs do this, but I'll tell you what we do at Royal Perth. We go sailing on a Saturday, we all go racing around the camps, we have fun. There's probably, I don't know, a couple of hundred, maybe 150 non-members sailing. They come back into the dock, they go up to the bar, and we have a winner's shout system where the winner of each class or division rings the bell, and beer is poured or wine at no cost, free card for everybody, and the skipper only gets a bill for $20 plus GST for the purpose of funding the booze. So not only are these people coming down to your club, they're going out for a wonderful afternoon sail. Oh, and I forgot one point. We lay on sandwiches or soup in the summer, free of charge, of course. So they get a sail for nothing. They come into the bar, they get a beer for nothing. They're a bit peckish, so they get sandwiches or soup, depending on the season, all for nothing, and off they go home. How wonderful is that? And it's that we've got to fix. And I think that my personal view, I'm passionate about the Sail Pass programme, as Alister well knows. It's something we've needed, frankly, for years. We've got to get people to take ownership in our clubs. We can't afford to keep giving all this stuff away. I mean, sailing is a wonderful sport, but pretty good when you don't have to pay for it. So I don't know what other clubs do it, whether other clubs do it as we do, but needless to say, I think we're going to be a lot better off when we've done it. But I think the safety aspect is the key. Knowing who is on the water. We had one only 6 weeks ago, a gentleman collapsed, had a heart attack on the boat. Exactly what Alister said. He came down last minute, bumped into someone, looking to go racing, hop on my boat. We got the ambulance down. Happily he survived. We haven't got a clue who he was. The skipper of the boat hadn't got a clue who he was. So what do you do? The man was seriously ill. He was not conscious. Couldn't tell us who he was. He hadn't taken his wallet with him, so there was no ID. That was left in his car. We didn't know where that was. How embarrassing. That is an appalling situation. So this will fix all that. And I commend Australian Sailing for bringing a real benefit to our sport and to our clubs nationally. Thank you. Any questions?
I'll just mention something, Stuart. Thanks, Stuart, for saying that. I'll tell a bit of a story against Sandringham Yacht Club. Just talking about talking about the culture and how difficult it can be. Like here we are as the champions of the Sail Pass, and how ingrained it is in some boat owners' minds and sailors' minds that they should be able to get a freebie.
Absolutely.
You know, we audit the gate onto the marina a couple of times a year, where we just check that people have got their sail passes as they go down to the boat. And so if we do that twice a year, the 2 days we sell the most sail passes on are those 2 days. So people still go down there, oops, they're checking us today, and they'll race off and get their sail pass. So it's human nature. Some people will do whatever they can to dodge it. But
the contrast to that is the skippers, the owners of the boat.
Exactly.
We're arguing to you, to me, to everyone else, that we are destroying sailing. It will be impossible to get crew.
But we've shifted the thinking a lot.
Yeah, that's nonsense. Any questions? Fire away.
I hate to agree with it, but the free beer mentality is just so prevalent in our clubs that it's terrifying. Some owners seem to think that by racing their yacht, they're doing a lot of favour. I don't know if it gets back to the old adage, the biggest free price and the biggest free service. But it's just a terrifying mentality. I think that we have to just keep chipping away at very, very slowly. To break that free beer mentality.
Yes. And it's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be kickback. There's going to be a period where we have to soft start this program and be accepting of people who walk away from it. But give it, I don't know how long, Sam, we're going to be playing, what, 4 or 5 years, Richard?
So initially,
shamelessly copy Magorized Liverpool, Magorized centre down Callard, and after
Yeah. Well.
Get on your mark. Yeah, another question there.
Just a question on the technology and the app. We trialled Member Point this last season and the take-up was woeful. Richard, another question entirely that I speak to Richard, thank you, about some of his experiences, but is Member Point the long-term solution, or did I pick up that Australian Sailing perhaps developing their own technology? And I say that knowing that I have a bill on my desk for the next 12-month membership with Member Point, just the cost that's required to pay for that.
Well, we use the ITA platform for Australian sailing is RevSport, and what we want to do is we want to dovetail as many IT platforms and programs into that as we possibly can, so that we're never telling a club that they should change or need to change or have to change. Member Point is the user interface that Sandringham Yacht Club uses, and I can speak from personal experience, and perhaps Richard could add to this and say it works absolutely brilliantly. But what our challenge is at the moment is what we're working on is making it as user-friendly and as integrated with as many current systems that are currently in use as possible. But as we go down the track, we will no doubt identify the ones that work best, and particularly be able to go out to the clubs that have got nothing or wondering which way to go, and say, look, here's what we could recommend because we know it works. Richard, do you want to say anything about Member Point? Because it's been great.
Yeah, so I'll just wind the clock back a bit. So there was a report called the Gender Report that was issued to all yachting clubs around 2010 or 11 from memory, and it told us what the public thought of yacht clubs. That they're expensive, formal, inaccessible, just all the things that you wouldn't want to hear. So the Sail Pass sort of evolved from there, and so we've tried to, a whole bunch of clubs, including us, have tried to flip that on its head. So if you walk into yacht clubs now, the member-only signs have disappeared. They've been replaced by welcome. And the Sail Pass is a great little medium for someone to walk in, register and go sailing, and literally the same day. So that's how it sort of initially came about, and over time, as everyone's using their mobiles, everyone's demanding the ability to do these things, you know, on their mobile or electronically. So there's a number of systems out there, good systems around the country. Member Point is one, and it's essentially an interface between our membership system and our race result system. And the reason that I'm a big fan of it is because one, the non-member can walk in and get the Sail Pass, but the big attraction for me is the sign-on. So having an actual record of the people that are out on the water. So it's related and tied in, but it's one of the few systems out there. And like Sandy, we'll eventually tie back to RevSport, the Australian Sailing.
Thanks, Richard, for the positive from the Royal John. We've been in this country for a little while as well, and it's every advantage that Alister has put up there today, we've experienced as well. It's a big database that people have got through. But one of our challenges has been that some of our members' phones are as old as them, and some of our members' phones are as old as the members themselves. And so part of the customer service is that we have staff available with iPads, just running a clubhouse with them, so that when they come to register, we've had some filthy language and some bad tempers because they really can't get frustrated, so we've got to provide that service just to make sure that they do learn the system and can get on easily.
Could you use the microphone, please? Thanks.
I alluded to the fact that we've really struggled to get buy-in from our members and non-members into this scheme this year. So I'm just interested in your experience and maybe some examples of what has worked, like carrying iPads around to get people across the line to use the system.
It's been a lot of hard work to get to the point where we are, because we needed buy-in, and Alister gave the example before where we would man the gates. We don't want to do that. That's the last thing we really want to do. The mission was to change the culture, and so it was hard work and continues to be hard work. But essentially now we're in a position where we've introduced penalties for non-compliance. So an example, a couple of Saturdays ago where a boat finished first and got penalised and ended up finishing after the penalty 6. And they were particularly unhappy, but everyone else was pretty happy. So, so good examples really has been the leadership shown by the key decision makers of the club. So if the committee has buy-in and then everyone falls into line, and having people selling it like Alister, and it's probably been the best example to change the culture. But we've received an awful lot of criticism, but the good is far outweighing the bad.
Yeah, well, we've had a fair bit of flack, particularly early days to get it up and going. We took the position to educate before we legislate, and so the skipper doesn't do it, they get a phone call from staff who encourage them, get them in and show them how to do it. We cross-reference against the POBs, people on board, against the actual crew decks themselves, to make sure we're getting as many people, capturing everyone who's on their boat, and we do have penalties as well for that, but we haven't hit the legislation button yet. But that's on the drawing board for this year.
Thanks, Phil. I'm getting funny facial expressions which would indicate that we need to wind up. But
Yeah, right on
just to
time.
be polite, one last question.